the old man named Doni, who had been interrupting Haru throughout his time preaching the story of Jesus to the people in Kumayo village, was now trying to explain to Haru why he had kept yelling, "It is true! It is true! Listen, my people!" He stood in front of Haru, there in Kumayo village, still with the smells of cooking human flesh wafting around them, still with the pigs running around their legs. He stood in front of him holding a large sack in his arms. It looked somewhat heavy. And he said to Haru that he had what sounded like a dream. He had been laying in the dubu. Who remembers what the dubu was? What was the dubu? What was the dubu? The longhouse where everybody would live and sleep. He had been in the dubu, and he had had a dream where the roof was gone, and suddenly a large hand was reaching down through the roof, and he had said, "What do you want?" And he heard a voice saying, "Hold my hand." So Doni had reached up his right hand and grasped the hand, and next thing he knew, he was outside of the longhouse, and he was holding the hand of a tall, shining man. And the tall, shining man said to him, "Doni, if you stay here in the dubu, you and your family will someday perish. But if you come with me and build a new house out away from the dubu, then I will come back to you and tell you more." And then the shining man disappeared. And Doni woke up, still in his bed, in the longhouse. Doni woke up in the longhouse, and the first thing he thought is, "I want to hold that hand again." That is what he wanted. And he determined he was going to do whatever it took to see that shining man again. So Doni woke his family up, and they began packing. And a couple of his elders, Sokka, the one who later had the dream 3 days in a row that someone would come, that 3 men in a canoe would come, Sokka and another village elder, Pane, they said, "Where are you going? What are you doing?" And he explained to them what he was doing. They said, "Well, we'll follow you. You are our chief. We follow you." So they also moved with him out into the jungle about an hour away from Kumayo village. And then, since they didn't really know what they were supposed to do, they built new huts. And a couple days went by. There was no new messages from the shining man, but Doni was waiting for him. He built the huts, and he waited. And he would travel with his family to their garden, closer to the village, to harvest food, and they would come back. And every night he would go to sleep, hoping to see the shining man again. And finally, after a few days, the shining man came to him again. He woke up laying there on the floor of his small hut, and the shining man was suddenly by his bed. "Hold my hand." Doni held up his right hand and held his hand. Next thing he knew, he and the shining man were outside the hut, and the man was telling him, "Tomorrow, go back to the village and kill all of your pigs. They are not good for you to eat or live with. If you do this, I will come back to you." And Doni woke up, and he was back inside the hut. And his right hand just wanted to hold that hand again. In fact, it felt different now, his right hand did. And he wanted to have that man holding his hand again. He wanted him to come back and tell him more. But he also didn't really know why to kill all of his pigs. Because, see, pigs weren't just something that you ate. Pigs were your money. Pigs were a way to be able to show that you had been around a while and you had made some really good deals. You'd made some good trades and people had paid you lots of pigs. And if you had lots of pigs, you could do pretty much anything you wanted. You could pay people for stuff. You could buy for stuff. If somebody was angry with you, you could give them some pigs so they would forgive you. Kill all his pigs? Doni had the most pigs of anybody in the village. But he wanted to hold that hand again. So Doni told his family, here's what we're going to do. And they went back to the village. And Doni announced to the people, there will be a big pig feast tonight, but I and my family will not eat. And then they proceeded to kill all the pigs. It was over 50 pigs. Have you ever killed one pig? 50 pigs is a lot of dead pigs and blood, and the flies came from all over, just buzzing all around. It was a big old nasty fly-ridden bloody mess. And that evening they roasted pigs for hours, and all the village people ate and ate and ate until their stomachs were just so full. Sometimes they would eat and then they would throw up, and then they could eat some more, but they just had to eat all this delicious pig. And Doni and his family just stood off to one side and watched them eat. And Doni had never thought about it before, but he thought, you know, these pigs, the way that they are living and what they eat, yeah, this is not for me. That's what the Shining Man said. Doni and his family went back that evening to their hut, out in the jungle. And that very night, the Shining Man showed up again. And he told him, oh, yes, he said, hold my hand, hold my hand. Doni held his hand. He loved the feeling of holding this Shining Man's hand. And the Shining Man said, tomorrow, go to your garden. Harvest enough food tomorrow for the next day. Then, on that next day, do not garden, do not hunt, do not fish. Just stay at home, and I will return. Doni got up the next morning. He took his family. They went to the garden. They harvested the food they would need for that day, plus extra food for the next day. They went back, and the following morning, instead of going out back to the garden to get food for that day, they didn't need to. They had the food there. And Doni didn't go hunting. Doni didn't go fishing. He didn't work on making a new tool. He just stayed in his hut with his family. And he felt, even though he couldn't see, he felt the presence of the Shining Man. And he felt the peace in his heart. Doni just spent the day sitting and talking with his family and feeling different than he ever had before. That night, the Shining Man came to him again. Shining Man said, hold my hand. Doni was so happy to hold his hand. And next thing he knew, he was outside of the hut. And the Shining Man was pointing at the ground, and there was a stick, really more a pole, a long pole. And the Shining Man said, this stick, you will go to your garden, collect much food for many days, bring it back, put the food on the stick, and I will come back to you. And he was gone, and Doni woke up in his bed. He was just lay there awake the rest of the night, waiting to see if there would actually be a stick outside of his hut the following morning. And he got up finally when it was light enough to see, and he went out, and there was a long pole. Doni later said it was probably about 16 feet long. A long pole. And on the pole, there were marks. There were, not cuts, not burns, just some kind of a mark on the pole. And he counted the marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, way over here, 10. The Shining Man had said to put his food on the pole. Okay, he went to the garden. They worked hard all day, collecting much, much food. They used something to carry their food in called a billum. These were sacks made out of special type of plant material, so kind of like a woven basket. And they could be very large and they could be very strong. You can carry one on your back. Sometimes they would have ones that were extra tall. They would come up higher above your head, and there would be a second strap that would go around your forehead. So you had it over your arms and around your forehead to hold a lot of material. So they went out and they used a couple large billums to bring back lots of food. And they poured all the food out on the ground. Sweet potatoes, taro roots, bananas, And then Doni looked at the marks, put the food on the pole, on the stick. Okay, took one banana and he put it on the first mark. Took another banana, put it on the second one. And he went on down, going there, 9, and the one on the 10. And he did that with all his bananas. Then he took the sweet potatoes, one on the 1 on the 2, and so on, all the way to the 9, and another on the 10. And he did that with all the sweet potatoes. And what do you think he did with the taro root? The exact same thing. He went through all the food and laid it all out. Laid it all out. Okay, good. Now what? Well, the man said he would come back. Wait, but this is a lot of food sitting out here on the ground. I mean, you guys remember the story of Likabeki earlier this week. What do the pigs like to do to the gardens? They get in there and they dig up all the food and eat them. Now you have all this food just laying out here on the ground. Certainly pigs will come in the night and eat all the food. The Shining Man said to put the food on the marks. And the Shining Man said if Doni did that, he would return. And if he returned, Doni would get to hold his hand again. And there was nothing he wanted more than to be able to hold that hand again. So Doni said, okay, we leave the food on the marks. And he went to bed. And that night, the Shining Man appeared again. Hold my hand. Doni held his hand. Immediately they were outside of the hut, standing out there by the pole with all the food on all the marks. 9 marks plus a 10th mark a little ways away. And the Shining Man said, these marks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, these are yours, Doni. You eat these. This mark, the 10th mark, this is mine. You put all this food in a bilam and you save it. Leave it. Do not touch it any further. It is mine. If you do this, I will return. And he was gone. And Doni woke up and waited until the morning. He went outside. The pigs had not eaten the food. There was not one bit of food left. Some marks of wild pigs in the area, but none had come to the pole. Doni grabbed his largest bilam. He went over to the 10th mark, and he began to fill it. Sweet potato, taro root, bananas, anything else that he had been able to grow and lay out on the marks. It was a pretty big bilam. And I guess I'll put it in the refrigerator. They don't have a refrigerator. You normally would go and harvest your food the day you were going to eat it, maybe the day before, because in that hot weather, food could spoil pretty quickly. What was he supposed to do with a big sack full of food? No way of keeping it protected against pigs now, or cool, or under the ground. So what was he supposed to do with his bilam? And who was he supposed to give it to? And there were a lot of questions that could have caused someone else to go, you know what, this is just bizarre, and I'm not going to worry about this anymore. This doesn't make sense. But Doni wanted to see the Shining Man again. He wanted to hold that hand again. And so Doni said, we will do it. We will take the bilam, fill it full of food, and now it goes on a special place right outside of our home. No one touch it. And no one did. They collected all the other food from the 9 marks, and they ate, and they worked. And a couple days later, the 7th dream. In the dream, Doni woke up to find the Shining Man standing next to him, saying, hold my hand. Doni put up his right hand, grasped his hand, and now immediately he was back at Kumayo village. And he was standing on the shore, looking down the tributary, the Wamuri River tributary that led down to the Turama River. And he could see a light coming. And then he saw, coming up the river, something he'd only ever heard about before. It was a gigantic whale. There were no whales in the rivers. Especially not the Wamuri River. The Wamuri River, like we said, was a pretty small river, especially at the mouth. It was so small that it was hidden by branches. Unless you knew how to find it, you wouldn't find it. Now there was a whale swimming up the river. It was white. And on the whale, even more bizarre, was a brown man standing on the whale. It's like whale surfing. And as he was coming up the river, Doni could see the man's clothes were shining, and he had something in his hand. And as he got closer, Doni could see it was like a, kind of like a, maybe a box. And the shining man said to him, he has the book of life. The book has life. Doni, you must tell your people, the book has life. You must go back to Kumayo village. And when my representative comes, you will give him the bilam of food from the 10th mark. And you will tell the people what he says is the truth. And he will show you the book of life. And the man was gone. And Doni woke up back in his hut. And Doni got up even though it was dark, and he began packing. Come, family, come. We're going back to the village. The shining man said we must go. We must be there on time. They got everything packed. They went back to the village. And now as Doni looked at Haru with this big bag in his arms, he said, that is how I know you speak truth. Listen, my people, this is why I say you speak truth. Do you have the book of life? And Haru said, yes, that's the Bible that we've been talking from here, the story of Jesus. And Doni's face was just shining, so happy. Look, my people, he has the book of life. It is true. The shining man said so. And then Haru began to think, as Doni had described the sequence of these dreams. And you know what he realized? These dreams had started about 4 weeks before. What else have we heard in this story that started 4 weeks before? The prayer meetings led by who? The students at the mission school at Balapa. The students, the kids, who had decided without even being asked to, hey, if Elwyn Martin and Haru and Amoa and Koibi are going to go up the dangerous Turama River, surrounded by villages full of cannibals, and they're going to try to tell the story of Jesus to them, we're going to prepare that God will keep them safe and that God will prepare the way. Had God prepared the way, not only had he sent dreams telling people, hey, be on the lookout for a white man and his family coming up the river, or be on the lookout for 3 brown men in a canoe coming down the river. God had already reached out to Doni and taught him about the Sabbath. That's why he didn't go out to harvest the food that one day. He just stayed in his hut and he felt the special Sabbath presence of Jesus there with him. He had taught him about the health message. Don't eat the pigs. The pigs aren't good for your body. What you put into your body affects your health. Don't eat that. Don't live around the pigs anymore. Already God had prepared the way, teaching Doni about tithing. How many of you give tithe? Giving tithe means to give 1 out of every 10 back to God. And what Doni had done, had learned, was set aside 1 out of every 10 food and give it to God's representative. God had done all of that before a single missionary showed up in the Kumayo village. God did all of that before a single missionary held up a Bible or told a story or said, you know, the Bible says you should keep the Sabbath. The Bible says you should tithe. All of that before Haru had arrived. Doni shrugged the straps off of his back and lifted the bilam and said, this is the bilam. 10th mark food for you, representative of Shining Man. and he handed it to Haru. And as he did, Haru looked at Doni's right hand. And what he saw caused him to almost drop the billum in surprise. Because Doni's right hand was now completely, we'll find out tomorrow.